to Bloody Good Horror.
Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting episode of Bloody Good Horror. My name's Eric and I'll be your host for this evening, where we will be getting weird tonight and reviewing the classic horror comedy Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. We're going to get to that in a second, but first off, joining me from Chicago, Illinois, he's the man of the hour. This was his pick for this week. Please welcome Joe.
Sexual Awakenings.
Yes. Next up on the show from Indiana, please welcome Casey.
My sexuality opened a long ass time ago.
Opened? Okay, we'll get into that later.
It may have closed by now.
Next up, next up on the show from Hotlanta, Georgia, and I know that because there's literally a fireplace behind her. Please welcome Cece to the show.
I feel like I need to say something about my sexuality. Like, I don't know. Am I in my prime?
Yeah. It wasn't hot enough in the South for Cece, so she put a fireplace behind her.
Let's all just go around the table before we get into the movie and just talk about our first time.
Share...
Or, turn-ons, turn-offs.
John, last up on the show tonight, you are the business manager of BloodyGoodHorror.com. You look like a sex offender in quarantine.
Yeah.
Please welcome John Schnars to the show.
I'm probably just going to be on mute for most of this episode.
I was about to say, is it hard
this
being in quarantine with your in-laws and trying to have this recording session?
No, we're good. Don't worry.
John's Sexual Awakening is published in the Duke newspaper.
That's true.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true.
It is detailed in Chronicle over several years. John, quick update. John Puby Beard Watch 2020. What do we got there?
Well, like I said, I've been trimming. I've been cleaning up. So
Although
this
it's
is actually
not, you can't actually grow long enough to curl. So I guess technically it's not. Puby would be incorrect.
It's not.
to
It's
say.
not. Come on, my pubes are a little more curly. But
Salt
Yes.
and pepper.
Well, I gotta
A
say,
little more gray.
I gotta say
All
this,
the
John.
back foot, and I really appreciate this.
I gotta say this,
talking about my
John.
armpit hair. That's
John, after last
For
week's
yours
show,
ends, John Benz.
after last week's show, John, I'm very excited to hear your nuanced takes on like third wave feminism tonight. So, pretty
God,
excited about
yes.
that.
guys.
We're here to
Guys.
talk about Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I think it's safe to say we've never reviewed anything quite like this on Bloody Good Horror. Some of us were first-time viewers, some of us long-time. So we're going to get to that in a bit. But first, we do this every week here in the show. Joe, please tell us what we are drinking.
Beer guts.
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. For those of you, I'm assuming everyone listening to this is familiar with Miss Elvira. But for me as a child, much like the Cadbury egg commercial symbolized the start of Easter, the Elvira Coors Light commercial symbolized the start of spooky season. And in honor of that, I'm picking Coors Light from the folks at Miller Coors.
Wow, what's quarantine? What's it doing to your brain, Joe?
Well, I mean, I'm not so much recommending the beer so much as just maybe Googling and looking up the cardboard cutouts that used to be in the grocery store and your liquor store back when I was a child, promoting Coors Light with the beautiful Miss Elvira selling their wares. I don't know, like I remember this. We'll get way too into this, but like,
I drank a lot of it in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're trying to funnel a beer or play flip cup, like it's one of your best options. comes in at, oh, I had it in front of me, but I think I lost it. It was like 4.2% alcohol. Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So, not super hefty. It'll get you there if you drink enough of it.
It's basically a soda. You can drink it while driving. I think it's legal in like 48 states.
Yeah. It's
it's one of those beers that people attempt a 30 rack of sometimes. I don't know if you've seen this. I've seen it.
It's funny you say that, John, because it is indeed the only beer. You guys know me, I'm a little guy. It's the only beer that I've ever been able to drink an entire 12-pack of in a single night. Which at the time I weighed about 120 pounds, so that would have been one beer per 10 pounds of my body, and I vomited, so that was great.
So did you actually like float away?
Actually, we were in a cabin in the winter, and that had a stove, like a wood stove. So we all got drunk, passed out, stopped feeding the wood stove, and all woke up. I woke up in an armchair after sleeping for the night in an armchair with no fire going and basically like frozen. It's a good time.
I thought you were going to say you peed in it, so that story turned out better than I thought it would.
I never really did that. Anyway, Joe, carry on. I'm sorry.
No, that's pretty much it. I assume the next day you had the bubble guts, 'cause that's what Coors Light will do to you.
I don't know. I feel like I always tolerated it pretty well. I tolerate stuff like High Life less. High Life messed with my stomach a lot more.
Yeah.
I bet you're pretty well hydrated after a 12-pack of Coors Light.
Yeah. Well, that's the same thing with like PBR. It's just like drinking a soda. You're just like, oh, I'm parched. It's a warm day outside.
CoorsLight.com is the website if for whatever reason you're interested.
If you're a psycho.
Yeah. Just want to check that out. And I would say don't drink it, but do what you got to do in this day and age, huh?
You know what? I could go for one. You just talking about it kind of makes me want one right now.
It's like a nostalgic beer. Like I'm sure Eric,
totally.
you have the same with Labatt Blue. Like it definitely reminds me of high school and
late
home.
Late 90s. Labatt Blue or like Molson Canadian was when we were big rolling and we had like fat stacks. We'd get some Molson Canadian.
Yeah. When we got older and we would go over the border and get Molson Triple X, which was like their higher alcohol beer.
Yeah.
Ooh, I've never had that.
I recall.
No.
You didn't live 3 hours from the Canadian border, Schnars.
No, I did not. We were Red Dog drinkers.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we definitely had that.
I don't think is still in production.
I don't think
It's a shame.
so.
CC, what was your high school drink of choice?
I mean, I went through a rum phase, then a Mad Dog 20 or Mad Dog 50/50 or whatever.
I knew you were gonna say
There
Mad
we
Dog.
go.
I just had. As soon as you went.
I mean, that was more going into college, but then by mid college, I was only drinking whiskey, and that's pretty much all I drink now.
It says here 2005. It has been returned. This is Red Dog returning to stores in a current price segment between Miller High Life and Milwaukee's Best. So apparently it is out there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean
I
that's
thought that I had seen it.
Red Dog's the
before.
kind of thing that's like ripe for a nostalgia play, right? Which sounds like kind of what they're doing.
Well, never before has there been an alcohol brand like so targeted to teenagers. Like,
My high school drinking choices revolve completely around my friend's older brother's mood.
Yeah, no, same. I would
If
say
he was happy with us, we got decent beer. If he was pissed off at us, we got cherry vodka and Milwaukee's Best.
yeah, no, I was gonna say if we were like hard up for cash or just whatever we could get our hands on, it was usually Milwaukee's Best Ice.
yeah. Well, the ice was like a big thing too, right?
That was
It's
stand
higher
for your
in
buck.
alcohol.
The ice had more alcohol. All right, guys, fascinating conversation, Joe. Who knew? Let's do it. It's time. Let's take a quick break and review Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
This is it, Senator. Your big break in TV. Of the prime time. Main feature.
And we're back. John Schnars,
Eric.
how is it going at the in-laws over there?
Not bad.
Yeah. I imagine you're basically on a Kennedy compound over there.
I mean, it's not that nice, but it's listen, having an extra set of hands when you have 3 children is pretty big.
Pretty
Comes up
pretty good.
pretty nice. I mean, well, and I mean, Eric, I don't think your kids are in school yet. Joe, I don't know what you're doing with Mia.
Yeah.
And Casey, I know you're not doing any school, thankfully. My son's in kindergarten. The list of shit that they send you every day, it's not that they expect you to do it, but there's like hey, you could do all this shit with him, and you're like, are you like in what universe does one of us have time? I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Well, like day one, we started getting like itineraries, and actually this week they finally like pretty much changed it up, and I think accepting the fact that like this is gonna be going on for a long time. So now it was like an all day thing, and now it's like down to like maybe like 3 hours a day that we're probably doing stuff for them. And when I say I mean like Leslie's doing everything, and I'm locked in a room pretending to work.
No, I mean,
and you're asking how it went at the end of the day.
I've definitely seen pushback of people just being like, "Look, guys, we can't expect all these parents out here to do this." Like, I'm literally taking morning video call meetings with my baby sitting in my lap, tearing my desk apart. So like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But you know what you could be doing, John?
What's that?
You could be teaching them words.
That's all I am doing. My son is learning to read, so I'm teaching him words. It's been nice.
You're talking about glaciers, and you're like, "Here's the word glacier." Like kind of like that.
Well,
I guess what I'm saying is, are you as lazy with teaching them words as you are us words?
Well, it's easier because he's
Hateful
kindergarten, and so he doesn't know many words. So I can come up with some pretty easy ones.
Cece, I don't want to hear what's hateful. Okay, you are the only person on the show that has ever murdered someone in cold blood multiple times.
That's
this is
not
like
hateful. That was very.
There was some hate.
That was,
it was like
that's where you get it wrong. There was no vengeance behind that.
It was like a mercy.
Your whole life is a wasted six pack.
Are you trying to say it was like a
life.
mercy killing? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly.
You did it with love.
John, do your kids ever look at you and be like, John, you used, or Dad, whatever they call you, you used that word a week ago?
John.
John. Hey, Shanners.
Occasionally they're like, no, we know that one.
Yeah, we heard that one last week, John.
Okay, Schnaps, whatever. All right, John.
You go shave, Dad.
They do say that too, actually.
John, please bring us the word of the day.
Little curveball for you here, Eric. The word is warlock.
Ooh.
Warlock. Warlock, a man who practices witchcraft, a sorcerer. The interesting backstory here, so it comes to us from Old English, and actually more specifically from the Scots. So the words that are kind of brought together are were, meaning, so were means covenant, and then logan or leogan means belie or deny. So you bring those together, and they use the word, the Scots use the word to mean scoundrel, monster, yada yada. But it eventually over time became someone who was in league with the devil, and it was basically only a Scottish word, I should say, until Sir Walter Scott apparently popularized it and sort of pulled it into more common parlance.
Huh. Belie or Deny is my favorite rap song.
Oh, well, there you go.
Little known fact.
Familiar with that.
Yeah. All right. What does that have to do? What does that have to do with this movie, John?
Well, Elvira. I mean, there's so many angles to come at this movie from, so we should I don't know, decide where we want to start. But Elvira's primary adversary, it turns out, as she seeks to become to take the crown as the true mistress of the dark, is her great uncle, whose name I'm going to forget, but he's a warlock, not a super nice dude, but great actor in this.
Yeah, hell of an actor. Sure, that's a good point.
I like that guy.
All right, John, we're here. Unless Joe wants to tell me about Elvira.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's Joe's pick, you know.
Yeah.
Well, John, why don't you, John? You just read and listened to the pod. You want to give us a little bit of Elvira background, and then Joe can do the synopsis for us.
Yeah. So Eric, I think, flagged, and I can't remember if you mentioned on the episode last week or if we were just talking about it after the fact. But
I did.
So Cassandra Peterson was on. I think you said it was a recent episode. I went back. It was actually like December 2018 or something.
John, you understand how my sense of time works, right?
Yeah. But the Mick Garris podcast, it's a Fangoria show. It's basically just Mick Garris talking to like famous horror people that he knows.
It's called Post Mortem.
Postmortem, yeah. So he had Cassandra Peterson on. I mean, it's funny because I've met her at like horror cons and stuff, but did not really know the backstory. She she apparently started working as a go-go dancer in the 70s or late 60s, like 68, 69, something like that, at the age of like 14.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think her mom was involved in the business or something like that.
No, her mom helped her aunt run a costume store.
Yeah,
So
so they
that-
made all her costumes, right?
Yeah, so she had access to like all these costumes and things, but no, she was like I think professionally trained dancer and essentially like got work as a go-go dancer locally in like Colorado, I believe, and then on a family trip to Las Vegas, she like talked her parents into taking her to essentially like topless clubs, like cabaret type situations, and she gets hired to work at one of those when she's 17 years old. And so basically from the time she's like 17 to her like early 20s is working as a dancer, kind of doing cabaret type stuff. I mean, it seemed like a lot of basically anything under the sun she was kind of involved in, but then just did everything in showbiz. She talks about like going to Italy and like being in films as like an extra. She was in like a band where I guess she was singing, but in English or maybe Italian. It was sort of unclear. Long story short, you fast forward to she's living in LA. She's sort of like working and trying to get work. She's part of the Groundlings, which is like the comedy improv and like comedy group there. I mean, it's like a famous one. There's like different cities have different Groundling troops and stuff. But coming out of that, she lands this part as a horror host, or they basically bring her in to like try out for this horror host. And through the process of trying out, she helps invent this character of Elvira, and she's been doing it ever since. So,
I mean, the funny thing is, I've never seen the show. Like, it must have been syndicated in the 80s, I would assume, which would have been before could see stuff like that.
Well, I think it was syndicated through the 80s and 90s. Like, certainly by the time this movie gets made, it's in full national syndication. So, yeah.
Even then, growing up in the 80s, I don't remember seeing more than one or two of them, to be honest.
Well, the other interesting thing is, and this can dovetail into Joe and the synopsis, but like Joe mentioned the commercial, Coors Light commercial. Is that what you said, Joe?
Yeah, so that came after this movie, though.
Well, but
that
my
was,
point is,
in the early
she
90s.
has done so many things like that she's one of those figures that's really permeated pop culture. Like, my parents know who she is. Like, my wife was asking, like, I don't know really who that is, but you see a picture and it's like, oh, it's that person. You know what I mean? Like, she has actually, I would wager a shocking amount of like pop culture recognition, even if you don't fully know who she is. Because
she used to show up like in the day though. She would do in character appearances on like everything from the Smothers Brothers to anything else that was variety show.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So like she did the horror hosting in this movie, but it's like the persona is actually so much wider reaching than that, and that's a lot of credit to her, I think, for just marketing herself, like coming up with a thing and just doing it, just over and over. Joe.
Yeah.
Keep this as PG as possible. Why did you pick this movie, and what's it about?
You promised me it would not be PG before the show started.
All right, never mind.
This movie's PG-13 and is pretty raunchy.
Joe, Joe,
exactly.
Joe,
Give it its due.
What's the NC-17 version of why you picked this movie?
I got these balls and these urges.
No, Joe, balls are X.
So when I was a kid, this is gonna sound creepy and it's gonna get creepier, but like I remember my dad always having like a thing for Elvira, and like it's probably one of the first things we bonded over. Like she was definitely like an early crush. And I want to say we watched her show. Like I definitely remember seeing her like on Saturday nights, and I don't know if it was like in syndication or like what the deal is, but I definitely watched her as a horror host wherever we were living at the time. And then like I just got really into horror movies when I was a kid, and like she was obviously always involved in that. So like when this movie came out, like I was a huge fan and like really excited to see it. And when I finally did, like it's pretty much everything. Like when did this come out? 88. So I would have been 10. Like it's pretty much everything like a preteen or teenage kid is looking for in a horror movie. Like it's surprisingly got some scary moments, but it's pretty much just goofy. You guys compared it to Pee-wee's Big Adventure a lot, which I think is a good comparison. But I mean, I was just kind of excited to go back and revisit it, especially when we found out it was coming on Shudder. So I don't know. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, as John explained, Cassandra Peters? What's her name?
Peterson,
playing Elvira. So it starts almost like it kind of follows her life a little bit, as John explained. So she starts as a horror host in this small town, not really happy with what's going on, but has this opportunity to go to and be the lead in a Vegas show. Come to find out that they can only get the show off the ground if she agrees to invest a decent amount of money in it to actually help get this thing going. She obviously doesn't have that, but as luck would have it, gets a message from her aunt who had recently passed that she had inherited some sort of wealth from her. So she heads off to this town, finds that she inherited the woman's house, a cookbook, and the dog. And you know, small town Massachusetts, the families there are shocked and appalled by her wares, as you might call them.
By families, you mean Mrs. Poole from the Hogan family?
Yeah, absolutely. Or what was her name? Grace from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Is that
Was that the tall lady?
No, that was the secretary.
Mrs.
Mrs. Poole.
Yeah.
Her name. What was her
yeah,
name?
yeah, yeah,
She had a friggin' amazing name. Damn it, I forgot it. I'll look it up.
Chastity Pariah.
Chastity
Yeah,
Pariah.
Pariah, yeah.
What?
So anyway, come to find out that the aunt was into the sorcery, as Elvira is as well. The cookbook kind of ties into that. Her uncle is after the cookbook. The town is after her for being salacious. And hilarity ensues along the way.
Don't forget love.
Well, yeah, there's a love interest. There's teenage boys.
We should mention the dude, the kid from the wizard from the Dream Master from Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is in
he's
this.
in there.
They got him.
Who you know?
There's a lot of that guys in this movie.
Yeah, I've seen Dream
Yeah,
Warriors. I've seen Dream Warriors like 100 times. I don't think I've ever seen that kid in another movie. So I just thought it stuck out to me.
My favorite thing about him and his two friends and their characters was one night they're pretty much like taking photos of her nude through a window, and then the next day they're just like super good friends with her. Like,
Well, I mean, they're still leering, but at
It's
least
still-
they are doing work.
They have like the
Yeah.
They have the sweetest like relationship though. After that, you know, they're just like buddies. CC, what'd you think? Had you seen this before?
I had not seen it before. I mean,
Oh wow.
I know. So I mean, of course I knew who Elvira was, and like, I think I've seen like snippets of things, and I very much enjoyed it. I think high school / college CC would have really loved the
vibes.
The what?
The vibes in this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I still love the vibes, but I mean, like, you know, the innuendos and the cleverness is
You're
a little.
above that now, is what you're saying?
No, I still love it. I'm trying to get Joe to talk about his sexual awakening, and no one will give into it. So I've had to learn to squash that, and a little part of me dies every time I do that. So I still enjoy the raunchiness of it. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun time. It was super campy, but I think that it's, you know, it's one of those movies that it doesn't really matter, like, if you are super into horror or if you're not. Like, I think that anyone could sit down and watch it and enjoy it, and I did. It was a fun time.
Casey.
So I'd seen this before, big fan, and I hadn't seen it for a long time this time around, though, so I was even bigger fan. It was fun to revisit, and it really held up well as far as the humors. I mean, this is kind of dad joke 101, all told when you get to the end of it, which is kind of her shtick, but it works, and it's really good, and it's hilarious. I was struck this time being able to come back to it after doing this show for years. You know, we've kind of learned, even if we're not necessarily good at it, we've learned how to analyze flicks and see what puts them together and what makes them. And the Pee-wee roots of this movie really stood out to me, which was huge. And then Eric, I'll let you bring it up later, but some of the way her comedy stylings are you really opened my eyes to that too. And I really like that. I've always been a big Pee-wee fan. Pee-wee has a certain punk ethos behind him, the character, and Elvira is kind of going along that same route, and they seem kind of really related to each other as you go through. Joe pointed out that Cassandra Peterson showed up in Pee-wee's Big Adventure as well. So,
well, they talk about it in that podcast, John, right? That they were in the Growlings together, them and like a few other people that.
They
that doesn't
definitely
surprise me.
knew each other for sure.
Yeah.
So,
but all in all, this movie's a good blast from the past, and it's really worth your time.
John.
And I think it says in the sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but in the the IMDb notes that apparently they wanted Tim Burton to direct this, but
that would
when
have
they
been
were filming it,
amazing.
he was off doing Beetlejuice, I think.
That would have
so
been
the-
incredible.
Man.
so we didn't mention the guy who directs this. His name's James Signorelli. I believe it is his only full feature film directorial credit. He might have like one other.
He did Easy Money, which was
Oh, okay.
which actually Rodney Dangerfield movie, and then like 2 years before that did the second Police Academy movie.
Oh, all right. I'm on his Wikipedia and it has like less information. In any event, he's worked on SNL since 1976. So he's like
Wow.
this sort of like
Wow,
very
yeah.
long-standing SNL guy. And then to Joe's point, he's done some other like he's been involved with some films, but it's really interesting. I mean, I think this movie. So is it my turn, Eric? I couldn't tell if you were calling.
I
It's
did
your turn now.
I did say John.
I had probably seen this not as many times as Joe, but definitely several times. I'm
In the
I mean,
same
I'm a,
settings as Joe?
no, I'm a little younger than Joe. So my experience with this movie was probably more when I was like 7, 8, 9, when it was on HBO. Because I think this got a lot of run on HBO back in the home box office days. It was better than I expected because, like Casey mentioned, I probably haven't seen it since I was like 10. And you're watching it for different things back then, but you
Speak for yourself,
Did you
John.
watch it? Did you watch it through the static back then? I mean, I don't know.
no, like I don't remember if I actually had. So we had this
John-
was like,
John-
oh,
yucky boobies.
John
no, this is
John
like
has
somewhat of a tangent.
it just goes without saying that Mrs. Poole sitting on that guy's face was really formative in John's sexuality.
Yeah, but I was like, wow, okay,
That
weird.
100% went over my head. Like there
Well,
was
yeah,
like,
it is very like
they cut
Revenge
it-
of the Nerds, where like you watch it 20 years later and like, oh, hair pie. I
But you
get
know
it.
what it is though, because they cut away from it in a weird way. Like there must be more to that scene that they cut because then they're just on to the next thing really fast.
well, it's also look. This movie dances pretty close to getting an R rating for no other reason than it's just like really raunchy. Like I mean, the Revenge of the Nerds is like a good comp in my mind. In any event, the brief aside I want to make, because the reason I think I saw this so much, maybe you all had this experience. You used to be able to do like the HBO for like a month. This is when it was like cable in the like early 90s. And like
They
my
would
one
just
friend-
give it to you for free sometimes to try to hook you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my one friend's mom, anytime that happened, she would just tape everything. So they would have on VHS like 35 movies that had been taped off HBO when it was like free for that month.
I like that energy.
And so then we would just like crush those VHS tapes for the, subsequent whatever 6 months.
So you did experience this,
Like-
like Joe, is what you're saying.
And again, I was like younger. Like it was definitely formative and like I don't know, like looking back, I'm like, man, I feel like I learned a lot about sexual comedy through this movie. Like I don't know. But no, like so in any event, it is a better movie than I was expecting it to be. Joe kind of like hinted at this when he was trying to explain it, but there's a lot of plot in this movie, like probably too much plot. Like the amount of sort of things that are happening are like I would say there's like one or two too many things, but it's ultimately pretty professionally put together. They get some really good talent. Like all the B and C list actors that they pull in here are people that have had really long careers. And that's why I was saying sort of the like that guy sort of quotient here is really high. Elvira, like she's like, I respect the confidence and like, even if she's not she's not like 100% of a star. Like she kind of like knows she's like B-list and
It's
plays into
like
that.
she's got a hustle and she works it, and
Yeah.
it's like very
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's impressive. This lady created this persona out of thin air, and is now a cultural icon. Like I said,
Well,
Yeah.
And in '88, she had probably like I don't know if this is like peak of her fame, but it's at least like the fact that they're making a Hollywood film that was released in theaters is sort of got to be mind blowing to her for someone who was like on local, access the net like the local TV station doing horror host shit. So I don't know. There's a lot to respect to this movie. It's not a like super well put together or it's not like a classic all time, but
It's
there's a
you
lot
know,
to like about it.
yeah. At the end of the day, it's a B horror movie. Like you kind of get that's what you're getting. I had never seen this before, and I didn't expect to think it was funny, to be honest with you, because like
Did you go through puberty earlier, or is it like that happened like, while you were watching?
John, what? Oh, damn it! I'm trying to remember. My movie was this thing they used to show on HBO all the time. Where was it? Just One of the Boys? Is that what it's called? Where the girl,
Oh, just
like,
one of the guys.
just
yeah,
one of the
which-
guys.
I was about to say when John mentioned
Right.
PG-13, like just one of the guys was PG
John-
back where you could have one shot of the.
Yeah, John, let me refer you back to the last 30 seconds of that movie if you want to know about my sexuality. But no, I just didn't know what to expect with this thing. I kind of expected the humor to be so corny that it would be kind of unbearable. But this movie is really funny. Like it's a dated kind of humor. There are a million like boob puns and wiener puns and sex puns. It's like very John, over email you made the comparison. It's like sex comedy light sort of,
Yeah.
because you're not
They
getting
use the
you're-
word bazongas.
Bazongas,
which I don't
yeah.
think I've heard in 30 years.
like you're not getting the like nudity of those movies, but it's very much the same kind of madcap style. Although obviously, like looking back through, and I suspect the sex comedies are like this too, but looking back through modern lens, it's like very rapey. But like
super rapey. That's
But the thing
like,
is,
one of
I
the things
think, like,
Leslie and I kept noticing. Like,
not-
there's just she has guys forcing themselves on
but
her. Like,
but like
the
not
most
knowing
sweet-
what to expect and being like, okay, a little wary because we're looking back at this through a modern lens. I don't really know much about Elvira except like her whole shtick is the boobs, right? And like this character would not exist today. She just wouldn't exist. There's no way. She gets, I think, kind of like pop culture grandfathered in. You know what I mean? In some way, because she's just like a beloved figure. But I didn't know. I was just curious how this was going to play. And what really surprised me about it, and I think is maybe the most interesting aspect of it, is that it was really weirdly more progressive than I expected. And this is just on me for not being super familiar with her character, but like the whole thing is really this satire on like small town morals. Like the town is called Falwell, as John pointed out, and the Mrs. Poole's name is what is it?
Chastity Pariah.
Yeah. And like, it's a weirdly, like, yes, it's dated and yes, there's like some problematic stuff, but she is like such a powerful character. And it's like she sort of uses her sexuality to her own gain and like manipulates people around her when it benefits her. And yet when people cross the line with her, she's like, just water off her shoulders. Like she brushes it off, or she threatens them with violence, or she actually kicks them in the nuts or something. And so like when you look at it as the world she's existing in the late 80s, this like Reagan kind of era, and you look at her, you can almost kind of I can almost kind of look back at her now as like she's really pushing back on that in a weird way, even though at the same time it's also obviously very intentionally like titillating. Like that's the shtick, right? But you're getting this extra layer there that I was like kind of fascinated by. And on top of it, she's really funny. Like, so Casey, the comparison that I had is that it's like, I mean, she's her own thing. It's very unique, but there's obvious influences from Pee Wee Herman. And then I thought like Rodney Dangerfield, because a lot of it's like she's doing a lounge act. It's like they'll just set up a goofy character in front of her so she can just run one-liners on him and just make fun of him. And you have to imagine there's all this crap on the cutting room floor, right? Of her just like busting joke. Like I couldn't even, I was texting some of them to you guys while they were happening, or I was like messaging John. You could do a whole show just like counting down the one-liners. There was something she said that was really funny when the two guys were getting fresh with her in the bowling alley. She dumped beer in their laps. I'm trying to remember what it was, but I can't remember. But then like the guy from Ghostbusters tries to kind of like force himself on her when he's looking at the house, and then the next day she says like, "Oh, I was 6 inches from making a deal on this house." Like that's just good, clean comedy, John. You know what I mean?
Clean
But no,
question.
I laughed way more than I thought I was going to. I think I definitely see where a Tim Burton could have come in and like elevated this even more, because it is
for sure.
it is really just a goofy, fun B movie, but it's got these wacky little asides, like the gas station blowing up, right? Or like kind of shit happening around her that she's oblivious to, because that's kind of what her character is. And you can
That
almost
gas station blowing up, that was like 1/10 of the budget they used
Yeah.
on that scene.
Well, what I love about it
Wasn't
is it.
CGI.
What I love about it is it happens early on, and it very much sets the sort of tone of it, right? It's just very light. We're having fun. This is a goof, but there's just kind of interesting thing happening under the hood.
Well, the tone is set very early on. So the very first scene, and I wanted to ask Eric about this directly because it's a low. So it shows her working in her local TV station, which the owner has changed, like literally like that day. And so they bring in this dude in like a cowboy hat, who's, I don't know, top 5 most disgusting looking humans. Who have
I know.
He's up
Yeah.
there.
And he immediately like physically grabs her boobs, like there's like sexual assault by today's standards. But
I think by the standards of that day too, John.
well, listen, it's very casually presented. I mean, I think in the film it's like presented as not good, obviously.
I
but
can't speak on
it's casual.
I can't speak on the manager, but with the part of that ranked truest to me was the guy in the control room barely paying attention while just shoving food in his face. Like that is a person that I know.
No, but that whole sequence where she knocks that dude over into the they're shooting the 6 o'clock news or the 11 o'clock news or whatever's just started.
Yeah, the
He's
idea-
so fast, he just destroys
The idea that they are running this show at like 5 o'clock at night in a studio 6 feet from the news set, and then they roll right into the news, like that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that whole thing. I mean, but yeah, I think you made the point though that it's tight. Like it is. It's a professional comedy film. Like it felt to me very much like an 80s. You can kind of run down the list. Like there's another. You ever seen Meatballs? The like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it has a very like Meatballs. Or it's funny that this guy directed the second Police Academy because it's got like that sort of vibe too. Like it's
Just mad,
100%.
Madcap
Well, and like
antics.
you're saying, it's got like all the 80s hallmarks. There's musical montages.
Oh, they're so good.
There's crazy explosions. There's overly gross people. It's pretty standard 80s comedies.
There's a house repair montage, which
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah.
like in any
Yeah, I
movie.
mean it's really sweet the
and
way
a dog makeover.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
we can't
I love
slide over that one.
I love the whole thread where she makes over the dog, and he's got like a mohawk, and he's got like a little leather jacket or some shit, and she sicks him on the warlock, dude. It's just like really funny. There's a lot of great little like unlikely friendship threads in this movie, like with how she becomes friends with all the kids, and there's a somebody brought up Footloose. There's a very like Footloose vibe. There's a specific scene taken right out of Flashdance, which was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Well, it was a Flashdance parody. I mean, straight up. But
Yeah.
I love and this again, very much sort of the 80s, but the idea that teens are like this ultimate good, so the whole premise, I mean, Footloose is a great comp because the whole premise of the film is that the town is so pure that the guy who runs the theater, who becomes her love interest, can only show G-rated films. And so Elvira has to like unlock this town by showing teens how to have a good time, but the teens are all super wholesome. I mean, yes, they're trying to like take pictures of them while she's like changing, but then she immediately becomes their best friends. And,
Well,
like,
and the movie she shows is like she talks about like it's such a bad movie, but like it's a bad fun movie. So like I like that.
Attack
like-
of the Killer Tomatoes,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
So like what she's influencing them by is just like to have fun, to like enjoy like
Yeah.
being yourself rather than like some weird.
Well, and that's kind of I think one of the really interesting kind of subtextual messages that you get from this thing is that like this isn't in the movie world. It's not a costume and it's not a shtick. There's literally a flashback where she looks like that as a newborn baby, which is incredible, right?
Which is one
Like,
of the funniest
and it's
shots of the whole thing.
and it's a
like,
gag, but it's also like, no, that's what this is about, right? She is who she is. She embraces it. To her, there's nothing weird about it, right? Like you could totally see Cece with jokes about like young Cece, but you could see like a young kid who maybe feels like an outcast or dresses different or something, like looking up to this character and being like, she is her authentic self. Like that's the vibe I get from the movie, and she forces everyone to accept her, and by the end they do, after they try to burn her at the stake.
Yeah, if I had seen this at like 6 or 7, I would have definitely embodied my goth a lot earlier.
Yeah.
But
I could just
alas,
see her.
I didn't see it until now.
I could see her being inspiring in that way for people.
Oh,
Yeah,
for
it
sure. I mean,
is
she's
a
still
very-
inspiring. Like I mean, like we're talking about before, like yes, she embodies, she embodies her femininity or her sexuality, like just herself in general. So that confidence transcends gender in general. Like everyone wants to be friends with her, everyone wants to be around her. Like she's just there having a good time and enjoying being there. And I think that's what's most important, because a lot of us don't always feel that way.
Well, there's kind of a message there too, that kind of sexuality isn't a problem if you don't let it be, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that we kind of talk about like Revenge of the Nerds and stuff like that, because like looking back at this, obviously when I was 10, like I didn't get any of the like subtext here, but like watching it again now, you kind of look at it and it is like a very sweet message, right?
Yeah.
Like at no point, and it's interesting too that this is like an 80s movie, because like at no point is she like the ditzy woman in this, right? Like
Exactly.
she uses her wares to get what she wants in certain
wares.
situations, but at no point is she like, well, like sleeping with anyone to get ahead or things like that.
Is
Like
she-
and
is she a
in the times
department
that she
store?
is being like silly or fun, like they're not ditzy. It's just like
Yeah.
you're very well aware that she's like, okay, well I need you to do this, so I'm gonna say
Yeah.
this to get you to do it.
Yeah, I mean the
that's
funny
the fun.
thing is, like, Revenge of the Nerds retroactively way more problematic than this movie. Like Revenge of the Nerds has
Yeah.
some issues, you know what I mean? Whereas like this thing, and again, me just like a casual, obviously I'm a horror fan. I know who Elvira is, but really wasn't that familiar with it. That was kind of the most pleasantly surprising thing for me.
Yeah, and I mean the comedy is very goofy and very of the time, but like I still thought it like held up. I mean, full disclosure, I was super high when I watched this again over the weekend, but like
That's the way to
I
go.
wish
though.
I was high.
That's
I
the
Hold
way.
on,
was
let's
well.
talk about this real quick, because
Like-
I texted the group about this. When Chastity Pariah sticks her finger in
Oh.
that like gumbo casserole at a public picnic and then puts it in her mouth.
So my
Her name's Chastity Pariah. Of course,
Well,
I
the
think
she
show
is
was
above
like,
everybody
I
else.
was so
I think
high,
Leslie and
that
I had a
sobered me up.
full cheesecake in front of us in that scene, and still we were just like, "That's fucked up. You can't." Do
my so my wife and I have the same ways joke about, we were out to dinner with some family friends once at a like an Asian restaurant, and this family friend of theirs who's like an older woman, she's sitting across from me, and they bring out all these sauces for everybody, and the idea is you're supposed to take some and like pour it on. She reaches across the table, dips her pinky in the sauce,
Oh.
tastes it, and then when everyone's looking at her, she goes, "I didn't do anything with this pinky."
Oh, yes, you did. You don't know that you
Yeah.
did. but you did.
Especially, I mean, listen, especially in 2020,
terrible.
it's even more
Yeah.
fucked up. But yeah,
Now I can't go to the grocery store without wearing a mask because of that woman.
yeah, exactly. Because like I think I was, because I was right across from her, I think I noticed it more than everyone else, and so I don't think my wife saw it. But I, like, as soon as we got out of the restaurant, like told her what happened.
I love Leslie, because if she saw something like that happen, like not only would she not eat that sauce, but she would like be done eating like for the
Messed
entire
up,
meal.
dude.
Just be like,
Messed
no,
up.
I'm out.
You know what's funny is I didn't even catch that in the movie, ironically.
Oh, we'll
Wow.
be glad, because it's a really gross, like,
Yeah. Because that casserole, for one, looks disgusting to
Right.
begin with. But then, like when she sticks her finger in it, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Well,
I mean, that whole
so-
bit, the whole cooking bit is amazing, right? Like she's cooking with worms and
That's
just
what I was gonna say.
oblivious to the fact that it's not food, and she's like, "Oh, whatever, I don't know." And like I loved her, and again, like my thread is like her commitment to this bit is what sells this stuff. So
Oh.
like
It was
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
her commitment to like the oblivious, like, I've never cooked before, so I don't know, I guess this
Yeah.
makes sense. Like that was like so admirable and adorable, like that whole scene.
But she's gonna
Yeah.
fix it up. She's gonna serve it to this guy. So she
Right,
has this
like-
pot full of shit, like absolute garbage. Literally,
It's like worms and
She-
dirt and
she
shit.
takes canned cheese and puts it around the edge. Which canned cheese, chef's kiss. But then she takes a bag of chips, closes it, sits on the bag of chips, and dumps it into the middle of the casserole.
Oh.
That was really solid.
She gave it the Elvira blessing.
I don't know. When you guys saw this as youngsters, you wanted to be that can of chips, right? Or the bag of
Oh,
chips.
yeah.
Like I remember thinking like one of my earliest memories was I would give anything to be a bag of potato chips.
Joe, I like
Joe, that thought occurred when I was 10, not 46.
Joe, I love that you
Yeah.
waited till Cece stepped away for a second to say that.
Oh, she's here, you know.
That scene also leads to like probably my favorite effect in the movie, which is that crazy bananas like
Yeah.
Jim Henson monster
it's
thing
great.
jumping out of
It
the
was
stew.
really good, yeah.
But what about
It
the
was-
star wipes, Eric? I figured you'd be all over that. There is like shaped wipes between scenes in this movie that cracks me up.
Listen, I mean, there's a real kitsch value here that there was at the time, certainly, and now it's just aged like a fine wine, you know. So
Yeah. That was the first. You were the first person I thought of. The second person I thought of was Joe and his CD-ROM mastery.
Oh.
any other scenes that stuck out to you guys?
I mean, the cookout scene is the one, and we kind of talked
Yeah.
about it. This is cool, but like that entire scene, I remember like it's like the one that sticks out, other than the obviously Vegas show at the end. But like that entire scene where there's almost like a full-on orgy in the middle of the town square.
I do. I get. 'Cause
Yeah.
it like interestingly dovetails with the previous cooking scene, which is like somehow the addition of just adding hamburger helper turned from a monster out of a pot to an orgy.
Yeah.
That's all it took.
Should we talk about the final scene? Because to me, it almost feels like out of place.
Well,
Although,
did
like,
you read, John, that because that wasn't in the original, they screened it and then they tacked that on at the end because they didn't think they would have budget for it. So they filmed the whole thing, and then when they finished, they found they still had money left over, so they filmed that. It
What
was
I
kind of
had-
added on.
which
so,
scene are
no,
we?
I did not read that.
Which
and
scene
it
are we
makes
talking
way more
about?
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which scene are we talking about?
So the
The
film
Vegas
ends.
scene.
Yeah, the film ends, and so the whole thing Joe had sort of set up. This
Oh,
is
the
spoiler,
the
but,
dance
like,
number.
Yeah, so basically the whole premise is that she's trying to make this Vegas number, and it like it actually like has no bearing on the plot for 99% of the film, but it is the reason that she's in this town, and it's why she's trying to collect on this inheritance for this person she never knew. She defeats her great uncle, the warlock, and then she inherits his estate, and that's when she actually gets enough money to go make this Vegas thing. And so there's a shot of her being like, Vegas, finally, or whatever the hell she says. And then it immediately cuts to her doing a pretty elaborate sort of Vegas cabaret situation, which includes, I don't even know what it's like. It's almost like hair metal-ish, or I don't like whatever you want to call that
It's pretty
first
good.
bit. But then there's a hip hop / rap. component.
Well, there was like an 80s rap for sure.
Yeah, that was
like,
the thing.
but it wasn't, honestly, for like 80s white person rapping in a movie, it was pretty solid.
It wasn't the worst. No, that's
At no
for
point did she say, "and I'm here to say," or anything like that. Like,
yeah. No, that's but it does conclude with one of the most glorious sequences of breast tassels. What are we calling them? Nipple tassels?
tassels, John. They're
Yeah,
tassels.
tassels.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean, you
just
can have tassels on your like your
Pasties.
jacket though. Yeah, pasties.
Pasties, yeah. it's-
Pro level, I would say. Like
Oh.
she's at the top. Like it's
That's
Yeah.
like
There's a
what
mountain.
professionals like aspire to.
Well, it's interesting because again, like reading on it, she apparently learned this for when she was a Vegas showgirl, and
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
she hadn't done it in forever. And then when they were shooting the scene, she wanted to do it again, and apparently the like line was, "Oh, it was like riding a bike, like it just could pick it right back up." Because it goes on for like 3 minutes where she's
It's
spinning.
Yeah.
Like, it is
delightful.
impressive.
Yeah,
yeah.
gave
It's,
me. I gotta say, I never had that childhood experience with this movie, but I can only imagine watching
Yeah.
that at a tender
Oh,
age.
it was an eye opener.
Yeah, I think I almost broke my neck.
I mean,
Amongst other things.
just one of the guys has about 2 seconds of boobs, and that was
Yeah.
enough.
And and right now in 2020, quarantine aside, there's a safe chance you go to a horror convention, you could still meet Elvira. She's still
Yeah,
doing
she's
this,
pretty
and she's
active.
doing great.
Yeah.
Man, I love her. Like, I don't know if you guys follow her on Twitter, but like, she's very vocal about her beliefs. Like, she's very
Oh, yeah.
much into like animal rights, and other political things, which I don't want to get into, that I
I,
100% agree with her on.
So I
like,
was at a
Not just legalize it, or
Yeah.
I was at a convention. I'm trying to remember when this was. It was probably last like early spring, and she was there, and I was there kind of later, and I was talking with some of the vendors because I knew them, and people were kind of cleaning up for the night, and she was there, and she walks by, and she kind of waved hi to the group and said hi, and kind of walked right by us, and this dude was like, "Oh my god, dude, she's so much hotter in real life." This guy was like a shambles just from her walking like 5 feet away.
But she is too, because I met
Yeah.
her at one of the horror hounds, and she's 69 this year. And
Holy crap, really? Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Because yeah, she
we
looked
would have
amazing.
met her probably within the last 8 years or so, and she is still completely gorgeous.
Killing
And
it.
I don't want that to sound sexist, but I mean, good for her. She's taking good care of herself, and she's done really well.
Listen, if you got it, flaunt
Yeah.
it. I would love to see what, like, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like Freddy Krueger, right? Like, you're never going to be able to, you could never properly reboot it with someone else, but I would love to see what this concept would look like filtered through 2020, like, concepts.
Well, there was that reality show, right? I think they had like 1 or 2 seasons where it was like finding the next Elvira.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it never
really?
really went anywhere. But yeah, it was a thing a while back.
the
I remember that.
No, I mean, this was, I had kind of asked you guys a question. I don't know if anyone had thought about it, and I don't even necessarily have a great answer myself, but this movie to me is such a weird time capsule for almost the fact that Elvira, like, to the point Eric was just saying, like what is Elvira in today's like society is like kind of unclear to me. Like, that type of celebrity is really kind of almost unheard of. And
Yeah.
then the fact that there was a full like publicly
Yeah.
or like wide release, it wasn't that wide release, but it was pretty widely released film in theaters. It blows my mind. Like, I'm actually
Well,
curious if anyone
yeah,
has
I
other
mean,
comps
listen,
they
like,
on this.
indie horror, so we talked about this a
This
little bit over
wasn't
email,
indie.
but
This was, again,
Yeah.
I mean,
but my point is, like, she was a thing that was organically sort of born of her own like will, and like
Yeah.
became a thing. This was also the peak of the horror genre in the 80s. Like, 1988 was the year Halloween 4 came out, made $1 billion. That's not a real number, but like the
A
slasher,
billion's a real number, Eric.
it was
I've heard of that.
saturated to the point where in 88 was kind of when people started saying like, maybe this has jumped the shark. But movies were coming out constantly, making a shitload of money. People were finally had home VCRs, and so like that market was taking off, and so there was a lot of money around at the time to like throw
Yeah.
at something like this,
Well, and I posted on Slack the other day. I found a like 17-minute documentary about Jim Varney, who played Ernest, about how he was the original viral video star and the way he started doing local commercials and stuff like that. And Elvira did a lot of that. She showed, like I said, she showed up on variety shows, Smothers Brothers, stuff like that, all over the place, places you wouldn't expect to see her. So she was going above and beyond to get that word out there, and it makes her more ubiquitous to culture in general at the time. It's weird.
I mean, to a certain extent, like, whatever, culture is sort of fragmented so much that I don't know that we're ever going to get someone that's that organically,
Yeah,
that
no, I
grows
agree.
that organically,
I think that she was very much, the Times very much provided a stew that allowed her to work this thing,
Yeah.
Well, I think there's that, and the way she conducted herself as she brought this character to life and brought it together. She's very steadfast on how Elvira is handled and very hands-on, and I think she kind of helped shepherd that away along the way too, so it didn't get away from her.
Yeah, I almost think of it like the best comp I could come up with when I was thinking about it is like these professional wrestlers who get big enough to become their own,
go
kinda
out
like
on their
film
own.
star.
The Rock.
Yeah, like a Dave Bautista. I mean, The Rock's actually really good, although he's way more famous than she ever was, But like Dave Bautista, who I actually really like. I think he's great when he's in movies, but I don't know. Like we might have seen like the peak Dave Bautista at this point. I have a feeling. So I don't know.
I don't know,
He's got
John.
that movie coming out where he like
Teaches
befriends a kid, and
teaches-
she's like a.
No,
or
I
he
think
is.
It's
so.
like My Spy or something.
Joe, I think
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
came out. Didn't it come out already?
I don't know. It looks awful.
I think it got caught in like Corona release.
I'm not gonna lie.
I think it's quarantine release.
That was one of the trailers I saw in one of our handful of 2020 theater experiences, and I was kind of like, It's not normally a thing I'd be into, but I was kind of into it. It looked funny.
It's funny too that you mentioned Dave Bautista, because I read another article recently talking about how today's action stars always have that one movie with a kid, like The Rock had the Tooth Fairy,
Mhm.
and Dave
it's
Bautista is My Spy.
yeah, and it's almost never a good idea. Hulk Hogan did something named
Mr. Nanny.
Mr. Nanny.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hello, great film.
Wasn't there
hold
a
on,
Suburban Commando too?
Yeah,
He
there,
had
he,
a-
had
Oh,
a,
yeah.
he had a run of them. I was gonna say, because Schwarzenegger, Kindergarten Cop, is like, I don't know, certainly top 10 Schwarzenegger.
The
I'd
difference
say.
is
It's
Hulk
up there.
Hogan. Hulk Hogan is an absolute dog shit actor. It was the problem.
yeah.
He's not a great person to begin with.
Yeah, no, not great. All right, guys. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Do you recommend Joe,
Yeah, absolutely.
Cece,
Yes, for sure.
Casey,
Absolutely.
John?
Adolescent boys, strongly. Everyone else, pretty strongly as well.
Yeah, big thumbs up. 5 thumbs up from the BGH crew. I think it ages weirdly well in a way you might not expect. It offers a lot of just a light, good, family-friendly time. John is what I would call this movie.
If your family is down with face sitting, you're cool. You're gonna be good. You're gonna be
Let's say implied face sitting.
yeah, no. All right.
It's on the Charnews family crest. It's, E pluribus face situm, I think is our what it says in there.
This is how I know Cece's not listening right now. Is she did not laugh at that.
Sorry, I got distracted.
Says the Charnews in calligraphy, free mustache rides.
No. Oh my god.
All
You're
right,
better off.
that's going to do it for our review of Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. We will be back for fan mail after this brief break.
In California, you'll find fun, romance, and vampires.
You better get yourself a garlic t-shirt, buddy.
You been eating pizza?
No, why?
Ooh, you smell like garlic.
The Lost Boys. The New York Times calls it timely, relentlessly funny, and a hit comic twist on the classic vampire movie. Bring home The Lost Boys on video cassette from Warner Home Video.
This is Diane Franklin from Better Off Dead with Bloody Good Horror.
Send feedback to info@bloodygoodhorror.com or on Twitter using hashtag AskBGH. Join Patreon to get back episodes and much more. Patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror.
John, you seemed moved by that Lost Boys trailer.
Well, I believe the voiceover was New York Times calls timeless. Something like it was basically 3 pull quotes from the New York Times, which I mean, maybe they said it, but it seems like a reach.
The
I don't know.
hilarious thing is,
You're
of all
saying
the
that's fake news, John?
of all the
It might be.
of all the 80s horror movies that I've seen, I find Lost Boys to perhaps be the least timeless. It is of a time.
Yeah, I only watched it. I don't know. It was probably like 10 years ago when I first watched it for the first time, and I remember being like, I get why people talk about this movie, but also, what the fuck is going on?
Well, no, I mean I love it, but it's pretty out there.
I remember my brother taking the like cutting out the newspaper ad for it and bringing it into the barber and saying, "I want to look like what's his name?
Kiefer
What?
Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland."
Oh,
Yeah,
badass.
He said,
Oh my
Nice.
"This is the haircut I want."
Listen, if you guys really want to get into sexual awakenings here, we could have a conversation about Jamie Gertz.
Listen, my sexual awakening was to Cassandra from Wayne's World, and
Very high on my list. As well.
yes.
Her name
Yeah.
was
Have
Cassandra.
you ever seen Less Than Zero?
Oh my
Oh, yeah.
God, yeah. Robert Downey Jr. like
Yeah.
bangs a guy.
Very depressing movie. Prime Jamie Gertz content, though. I will say that.
Prime Jamie Gertz.
She is.
I know I'm a
Watch
little.
it on mute.
She's a beautiful human being.
I know I'm a little older, but Joe might be able to recognize. But Diana in V: The Final Battle had an influential moment on my
100%.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, she was special back then.
Amazing.
It's funny you mentioned that, Casey. Like, she was one of the first that made me feel things down in the nether regions. Like, that, like, tight red outfit that they wore. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
she
big
was
hair.
so mean. She was so
I don't know
mean.
what it is about quarantine, but the last 3 weeks of shows have been the horniest we have ever recorded.
I just really
Getting
appreciate
out of hand,
that
guys.
Joe
It's
has such a
quarantine.
mean kink. Like I wouldn't have guessed that.
Have what? Like, for Leslie, literally, we were talking about this the other day. Who's that comedian that's on oh fuck, I don't remember her name.
Joe's
She's
like
had a bunch of net...
Joe's like one of those guys who like pays chicks online to drain his bank account and say mean things to him.
She's had a bunch of Netflix specials. She's an Asian comedian, like with glasses.
Oh damn it. I know
She's
you're
in
talking about.
Always Be My Baby.
Yeah, I was gonna say she just had that movie, but I know, Ali Wong.
Yes.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Like, I
Nice.
forgot why, but Leslie was asking, like, do you find her attractive? I'm like, she's so mean.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
She's also like a lot of her
I think
comedy.
she's
A lot
beautiful
of
too,
her
though.
comedy is
Oh,
about
yeah.
a lot of her comedy is about being mean to her husband too, which is like right up your alley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You guys are watching it, and Leslie looks over, and she's like, "Do you have a boner?"
No, no, Eric. She knows. She sees it.
I'm just sitting there with no pants. Jesus.
Well, he's got his.
Well,
He's
you know,
got his.
we're
He's
in
got
bed
his.
watching.
Gray sweatpants.
Yeah, he's got his schnar slacks on.
Are those pleated khakis? What?
No, schnar slacks are creepy too tight sweatpants. If you were on Slack more often, you'd know this.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Joe also has a good
I
sweatpants Schnars nickname, but I forgot it.
Yeah, I still like to call him Wrong Johns.
Oh, you guys, I needed this today. All right, guys, there's a lot going on at Bloody Horror right now. Last weekend, we're trying to do lots of stuff to just kind of give people in the community things to do. Last weekend, Joe did his Halloween in quarantine thing. Joe, I'm going to say I was surprised we had a lot of participation on social media.
Yeah, it was a blast, and I'm sorry because I wasn't as involved as I planned to be. I actually had to run a marathon on Saturday, so I didn't really get into it. Like, literally, I was like trying to text and tweet, like,
cool humble brag, Joe.
Yeah. Like, literally, so the way I run is I'll run a mile, then walk 2 minutes, and literally I was trying to like text and tweet and like interact with people like on like my cool down 2-minute walks. But yeah, it was great. Like, we had a bunch of people just kind of posting up the stuff they were watching, like sending in pictures of like the spooky t-shirts they were wearing and stuff. Like, it was great. Like, I was really happy that folks got involved. Like, my daughter got dressed up over the weekend. Like, it was just it was a fun time.
My wife saw it and was like, "Are you gonna do something?" And I was like, "Theme days are more Joe's thing, but I appreciate his efforts." I have hard enough time. I have a hard enough time doing stuff on actual Halloween, let alone a fake Halloween. So, but it was great.
Like, I don't think we wanted it to be like a big thing where, like, you know, like we were pushing hard on it. Like, I think it was just like a fun time. Like, if people wanted to join in, it was something to do. So, and then I think it worked out well.
Listen, people really appreciated it, Joe. There was a lot of participation, so it was very good.
Yeah.
All right, but we got another event coming up. The halfway to Halloween, let's call it. Pass to that BGH 5K.
Yeah, or I like to call it the Eric decided to get active, so he wants to do this.
I'm losing weight literally just from stress walking.
I have lost nothing during this quarantine.
I was going to say, I've lost 5 pounds and not worked out, and I'm pretty sure it's just because I don't have the stress of going into the office every day.
I've gained at least 10 pounds from beer alone.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I've been drinking more. I've been eating worse. Like, literally, like, I would try and be somewhat decent during the week, but lately I've just been like, what's the fucking difference anymore? Like, but yeah, anyway, the weekend of May 15th, we're doing a sort of mini virtual 5K, meaning we're not doing medals or anything this time, but we're kind of like the Halloween gathering. We're just hoping that folks will get out there and, you know, post up on social media or whatever they're doing and kind of share and interact. So yeah, I mean, we'll let folks send in times, and if we can, we'll do something for the kind of best runs that we get. But overall, it's really just to have fun, and we'll post up details on the site. I meant to get that done last week, but just didn't get around to it. But yeah, we're about a month out, and it should be a good time.
Love it. All right, quick news and spin-off stuff happening. Cece,
Yes.
something read in the Patreon feed right now.
Yes, there's an episode with me and our good friend / listener Dusty, and we talk about Stephen King's The Outsider, both the book and the HBO series. And coming up, we have an episode of The Cabin at the End of the World, which is a real downer of a book, but Andrew and I have a good time talking about it, so check that one out too.
Beautiful.
Cece, that's actually out today, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's out right now.
Oh, well, we are all very excited for the return of Something Red. So if you want to check that out, when you become a patron, there's a feed for spinoffs. If you need it, shoot us an email, info@bloodygoodhorror.com. We'll resend that link. And then in the main feed, Joe, episode 2 of the greatest podcast ever told.
That's right. John tried to keep it down, but we finally posted it up today. Episode 2 of Ask Joe.
I mean, to be fair, I just edited it like yesterday.
Yeah, no, I just ignore him. You know, let's move on.
Jealousy is not a good color on you, John.
It's fair. I can't wait to listen though.
Anything else you want to get to, Eric? Or you just
No, I'm typing very important information in the chat per our discussion on Wayne's World.
Yes.
Let's see what else we got.
Excellent.
Did anybody see that? This news probably means nothing to anybody on the show, but did anybody see that Chris Jericho is going to be on the debut episode of the 2nd season of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs?
I did.
I have absolutely no idea in what context. John, do you know who this is?
Say again?
Chris Jericho.
Oh yeah. WWE guy, right?
He was. He's now. Yeah, he's now with AEW.
Yeah, I do know what AEW is, but I don't. You know, I'm not so in on it.
I have no idea why or how this is going to relate, but I do know that Darcy's like a big wrestling fan, so who knows. But I'm also really curious to find out if did they film this before the quarantine? They were just putting it together. Is this going to be like the legit thing on the set, or are we getting like some weird bootleg like Skype version of the show? Because that would honestly kind of bum me out. But I could really use the full escape right now.
There's no way they're going to be on set. I mean, my guess is.
Well, no, but they could. It could be in the can already. I know that show is not live. There's just I've seen too much evidence to the contrary. There's no way it's live. So
yeah, fair.
So
I don't know. One of the common memes going on with conference meetings right now in this quarantine is seeing what your coworker's house looks like. I'd be fascinated to see what Joe Bob's den looks like.
You know what though? It's just not the escape I need right now. I need the trailer.
That's fair.
I need the crickets in the background and the light, and I need everything.
I don't know, man. So I religiously watch Jesus and Mero, and their remote show is almost as good as their live show.
Yeah,
and they've done really good.
Watching that too, and it is really good, really well done. One of the best remote shows.
You know what?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that because they started out with a show, but they slid back into it really well.
I will say, there's one thing I've seen shot from home that I genuinely was I very much enjoyed this without qualifiers, and that was the extra episode of Tiger King that Joel McHale hosted where he interviewed people. We just watched. It's incredible. We watched it last night.
Is it good? We
is it, start. It's on Netflix?
Yeah, they released a new episode. It's
released Sunday.
Joel McHale sitting on his couch, and he does Skype interviews with a bunch of the people, and they just show the whole interview, and then they cut to the next one. It's 40 minutes long. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's in with the other episodes,
John. About how they shouldn't have live carnivorous animals like that in captivity.
Yeah, I mean, so he interviews largely the more sympathetic people on the show, with the exception of the douchebag Ed Hardy guy, whoever that guy was. But it's really good. Anyway,
Joel handled himself well with those people, but he did like touch on touchy subjects.
listen, I as someone who literally right now is like making in his day job is making TV happen remotely. I'm very impressed with all of the like things people have been able to do with technology, but when I'm like at the end of the day I need my entertainment, it's just like it doesn't work for me because it's just constantly reminding me of what's happened. Like I've been watching old stuff, just like very old stuff to just try to get some.
I can feel you because that's Kyle's normally on set all day long. So for him to be in like Skype calls all day long, and when we go to watch something, we've started watching Sons of Anarchy again because he's like, I can't watch anything that's on TV right now. So
Eric, I'd be interested for you to go back and watch this past weekend's episode of SNL where they did SNL at home.
I saw a bunch of it. It was actually better, much better than I was expecting.
I saw a brief.
It was a lot better than
I saw a brief clip of their Ninja Turtle thing, and that was it.
Yeah, and I think that one was probably made before, but I think they did a good job with what they had to work with. So I'd be curious to see what you thought of it, knowing that you're both working in the industry and that you're an SNL fan.
The funniest one was probably where they did a spoof on the like companies trying to do Skype calls now, like because that one like it worked the best. Like the ones where they tried to do like actual skits over whatever they were using like weren't that great, but
I laughed at the masterclass one that was about there's there was like the TikTok thing, and then there was a Carol Baskin.
You know what's funny?
I was laughing.
So I use YouTube a lot. Like I curate my own playlists and I use the recommendations. Like I use it a lot. It's actually like the recommendation engine stuff is pretty good if you use it a lot. But I get constant ads for those master classes, and sometimes they're relevant to me and sometimes they aren't. But there's some that just like, and maybe this is what they're talking about, but there's some that seem so not helpful. Like there definitely some of those just seem like people like
you should watch.
Okay.
Watch the SNL thing. You'll get a kick out of it.
Anyway. That's all my notes, guys. Info at Bloody Good. Tweet with BGH. I gotta pull up the info though because I forgot. Why don't I read the email and then we'll get this in when we're doing tweets. One email. Caitlin from Kissimmee says, dad joke and Disney, please send to Joe. Thanks. And this is an image of a Disney tattoo, and it's literally just the word Diz, D-I-S, on a person's knee.
Jesus.
It's right here.
I like it.
That's real bad.
There you go, Joe. It's in the chat, just for you, buddy. That's the only email this week. Very, very pertinent. info@bloodygoodhorror.com. Very quickly, I am going to find.
That's like a you lost a bet situation. There's just no way. He doesn't even have other tats. It's not like he's not obscured or hidden by other things.
This is a good
one. You
one.
only see his knee. You don't know that he doesn't have other tats.
This
Well,
is
not around it. Have a lot of stupid tattoos.
This is a good one, John. Slumber Party Massacre. This Saturday, April 18th. Tweet with BGH. Slumber Party Massacre. It starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. So you can follow the hashtag tweet with BGH and follow the Twitter account at BGH New Class Live. So this is great because we're kind of like Natalie and some of the other people on Slack are like with our patrons are organizing like multiple watch-alongs a week, like 2 or 3 a week, and then people are kind of going over and doing this tweet with BGH thing kind of publicly, so anybody can do it. So lots of opportunities for horror community and distraction lately at patrons. So patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror is my pitch for the night. And who's got Twitter for me?
We also have the Goodreads book club, which you can talk about on our Slack if you're a Patreon, but or patron, whatever. If you're on that
Patreon.
list,
The proper term is Patreon. CC, don't let them sway you.
Okay, or you can go to Goodreads and look for the Bloody Good Horror group. Right now, Alyssa is doing an amazing job helping me out with that, and they, I think, are finishing up The Boatman's Daughter, or did just finish it up.
We're about halfway through right
Gotcha.
now. I think I think a lot of people are behind, myself included, but yeah. I got tweets. If we want tweets,
yeah. If we seem distracted, it's because there's an extensive conversation happening in chat right now between us about Tia Carrera and her, let's call her Asian equivalent, or not Asian, her porn star equivalent.
Yeah, Asia Carrera. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember. Like, this was like the height of like the early to mid 2000s like porn boom.
Yeah.
Asia
was a
Carrera.
boom?
was-
She was around in the
Well-
she was around in the 90s. I can attest.
Yeah, like this was like the push where like a lot of porn stars I think were trying to go mainstream, and like she was definitely one of them. And her husband Evan Seinfeld was this guy who was in Biohazard, or I think he is again now. Like he was on Oz.
So that's a different
for-
person you're talking about. Like that's the picture you just posted on chat is a different actress.
No, that's her, just with different amounts of work that has been done throughout the years.
I don't think so.
I actually
I'm
trust
largely
Joe on this.
I'm largely
I'm gonna-
positive this is a different person.
I'm sorry.
100%, Eric.
All right, I'm going to Wikipedia. You keep
just-
going, Joe.
I've done the research.
Is there a porn Wikipedia? There has to be, right?
Wikipedia. You know,
Eric.
funny enough, if you go on
Eric, trust
IMDb,
me.
it's
Shut your camera off now.
but I don't know how we got off topic here. But yeah, we're on Twitter at BG Horror. We use the hashtag
Yep, Joe.
AskB. Yeah.
Joe, I'm looking at this right now. 100% different person.
All right, we're gonna solve this after the show. Let's get through the tweets.
This is important, John.
It's important. All right.
Yeah, well, I'm interested to know who you're thinking of then. If it's
This
not
is the
Asia
person.
Carrera.
This is the person that. No, okay, John. Jesus Christ, Joe. what I am saying is, Joe, the person that I'm thinking of is that person with that name. The person you just posted a picture of in chat is a different person.
What?
I assure you.
All right, let's just move this along.
This is amazing.
There are a few things that I know this much about, Joe. This is one of them.
I don't think you want to go toe to toe on this one. Eric.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's move it. Let's move it along.
Actually, I want to explore this a little bit.
Wait, yeah, no. Now I'm upset that maybe you are right.
Yeah,
Hang
no,
on,
I
I'm gonna
know
look this
I'm
up.
right,
Evan
Joe.
Seinfeld ex-wife.
Because I
Maybe it
also
was-
recognized that other person you posted in chat.
So a
me.
Tin Eye shirt says Cagney Lynn Carter.
No, hang on. I'm gonna be really upset if Tara Patrick. Shit, you're right.
Boom. But that to your early 2000s, like porn stars going mainstream thing. She was definitely in that.
Lord.
Yeah. Oh my God, I apologize. I am one, I'm ashamed, and two, I'm sorry.
It's okay, Joe. You have a lot to learn, Joe. It's fine.
Oh,
It's the ways of a man. Anyway, ask BGH, the hashtag, if you want to send in a question about the movie we're watching or just general advice. We're here for you. First up from our good friend and fellow Patreon, Whitney Lynn. That's at Wibneys Plays. Time for a bit of positivity amidst the chaos. What's one positive that has come from this pandemic for you? For me, it's great to see our transit system getting much needed repairs and updates done due to a drop in riders. I don't know. Anybody got something? I mean, I think there's just a lot of awesome stuff you see every day of like people helping each other when they can't even like be near each other. Like even just like these birthday parades that people are doing for each other and like finding a way to still like help and be sweet to each other, I think it's very inspiring. Like, I don't know if you guys take like drives and like, for me, when I go to a grocery store, it's like nerve wracking. But then when I go like just pick up food or something, like it's very like it makes me really sad like driving by these stores that are just like closed up and stuff. So like I don't know, seeing stuff like that like really makes me happy.
I'm going to be fully honest with you, Joe. I have completely closed myself off because I can't handle anything. I watched Jason X today. That's my appreciated good deed that somebody made Jason X.
I would say, I mean, I'm going to say this out loud, and I don't know if I 100% mean it, but all right, I'll say,
that's a real white guy thing to say, John.
I was gonna say I'm spending more time with my children, which is nice, but it's also driving me a little crazy.
Here's the thing. I think all of us will look back in like years and be like, wow, wasn't that great the time we got while we're in it right now?
No.
I don't necessarily feel like that.
There's almost no way, and like so many people are losing jobs, and there's just no way that anyone's gonna look back on this positively. My kids, I should say, are spending more time with each other, and that is good to see, even if it drives me crazy. Again, as I was saying, so I'll go with that. That they are spending more time with each other.
I always go with the ha ha ha, my kid's 19 angle when you guys start talking about your kids and stuff. But going through all this, it's nice to see that my 19-year-old is very socially conscious and worried about what's going on, and reading up on it constantly, staying up to date. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Joe. Like, I think that everyone finding different ways to connect and like reach out and find what's important to you and what you want to make an effort for is really important.
I will say I am talking to my parents a lot more than I normally do. Not that I don't talk to them, but I'm reaching out more.
Yeah.
And I think, like, especially in my town, and I'm sure you guys are seeing it too, like, it's really, like, heartwarming the way people have gotten behind, like, small businesses around here too. Like, the amount of, like, support I've seen for, like, the small breweries here and restaurants and, like, anything that's still open and you can support, like, it's really impressive. And, like, I remember Leslie and I talking that, like, oh, shit, like, I'm worried that this is going to kind of taper off after like a week or two, but like we're like a month into this, if not longer, and like people are still going strong, like supporting a lot of these places, and I think it's really impressive, like how we've kind of gotten behind these places.
Yeah.
Word.
All right. Next up from Chris Alonte, best source for B horror and sarcasm, and he actually made this a question, or whatever. Elvira, Joe Bob Briggs, or Creepy Dave's VHS and beer? I mean, I think Elvira trumps all of them.
I mean, if you're talking
like sarcasm and one-liners.
Sarcasm, right? I mean, like Joe Bob's a totally different thing. Joe Bob's like conducting a redneck college class, basically.
Yeah, but I would argue on Joe Bob's behalf just because he's more accessible now.
I don't know. Well, he's still.
You mean like
he's still
available?
He's still doing it.
Well,
sure, yeah.
I mean, he's still got his show on Shudder now, which is pretty niche, but it's more than what Elvira's got, and it's aged a little more. That's all I'm saying.
I do
think
know
Elvira's great.
There was a big campaign after they had the successful, launch of The Last Drive-In to have them sign her, and nothing ever happened of it. I don't know if they talked to her or what, but
yeah, I can't believe that. Like, I think Netflix at one point, like, she was pushing for there too, and like it never happened. Like, I'm baffled by why like that hasn't been picked up, but who knows what's going on behind the scenes. Next up from our good friend Lycanthropology, she asks, what should I name this tiny angel? Also, and she has a picture of her with a kitten. Also, since I'm making my way through the Friday the 13th movies, which one is your favorite? I've watched 1 through 4 so far. I don't know. Any names for a cat?
Couple
Mistake, I would name it.
What about we're talking about Friday the 13th. What about Crazy Ralph?
Oh, there you go, little Crazy Ralph.
Yeah,
that's adorable.
Hey, come here, you Crazy Ralph. I've just rewatched the entire Friday the 13th series. I'm about to watch the 7-whatever-hour documentary they made. For me, I kind of enjoy all of them on different levels of nostalgia and goofiness, but part 6 to me is like the apex of 80s slashers. Like, it was the only one that set it at an actual summer camp with kids, and so there's this added like element of kind of suspense to it. It's like the dial on the comedy is just right. It's actually really well directed and stylistic. It's got this fantastic score. Like, I think 6 is just like chef's kiss.
I was gonna say 6 is definitely my favorite too. Like,
and,
it's just...
he comes back as a zombie, and so they're just going for it. Like, it was the first time he ever came back from the dead like that, and it was just a new thing. It kind of feels exciting, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and they like lean into the goofiness in that one for the first time. Like, I'm a big fan. All right, next up from @rzerb, are there any horror show hosts under 60 at this point?
Yeah,
I've got to imagine.
So Sven Gulli is younger, isn't he? Younger-ish? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think he's been around for a long time too.
Who is it? There's somebody who's on like if you have MeTV, there's a guy
that's Sven Gulli. He's on TV.
I don't think he's that old, is he?
He's pretty old.
Oh no. Well, his first episode was in 1970.
Holy
so
shit. Well, he looks pretty good then. I don't know.
He's
Yeah.
definitely over 60.
I mean, so there's a lot of people. There's actually kind of like some little communities on YouTube of people who do this kind of thing, like on an indie level, and so that's where it's sort of migrated to. The problem is that streaming services really ruined the whole concept because it was basically born out of movies being so cheap to purchase for cable and syndication, and some of them being so shitty they didn't really know what to do with them, and that's kind of where the horror host was born out of because they became the attraction to a certain extent. But now even the shitty movies, all those streaming rights are worth a lot of money and they get rolled up in big bundles, and so it doesn't make any economic sense to do it anymore. That's kind of why it hasn't been a thing.
Yeah,
But there is a-
he's 68 years old, the guy who plays Sven Gulli.
Wow, good for him.
There is a big kind of regional contingent of horror hosts out there, though. We all went to a horror hound within the last 10 years where they were celebrating horror hosts, and there was horror hosts from all over the country.
Yeah.
A lot of them we've never seen or heard of. I mean, almost all of them, but
I get the
they've got
vibe
followers.
I get the vibe that there's more syndication in the Midwest, just kind of from BGH fans that I've talked to. But like, there's definitely some kind of like there's a network that I think is syndicated called This. So here it's called like This Boston, but I think there's like a This New York, this whatever, and it's like a dot, a .2 or a .3 usually on one of your local stations. Like they have those secondary channels, and they have a horror host that I just don't see because of my. But when they do it now, it's like they're showing just the dirt worst public domain bullshit because on that scale, it's all you can afford at this point.
All right, we got 3 from Jody here. That's at Jody Webster. What's your go-to quarantine junk food snack? Thanks to Joe BGH, I've picked up some chicken and a biscuit crackers today, and they're all I want to eat for the rest of my life. When I got halfway through this question, I was going to say chicken and a biscuit, but apparently I've helped alert the world to their beauty and treasures.
They are good. What was the question, Joe? I zoned out.
Your go-to quarantine snack?
I've been eating a lot of toast.
Oh, that's fun.
Toast? Like what kind of it is that?
I don't know. It's a comfort food.
I've
Well, no,
been-
because it's on like this like multi-grain,
Ah.
multi-seed bread, so it's not
All
like
right, that's a little different.
it's not
That's
just like white wheat toast.
I've been eating a
You're
lot
not
of
eating like prison meals.
a lot of ice cream, a lot of peanut butter and jelly.
Mm.
And
Mine is currently Easter candy.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I will
just
take
whatever's left over.
I will take frozen strawberries and heat them up and like dice them up and then mix them into vanilla ice cream. That's the way to go.
Yeah.
Mine's been Funyuns.
Oh, those are good. Yeah. We've been baking a lot more. I
Yeah.
currently have a sourdough starter going up
Oh
in
my
the
I
kitchen.
tried to make shortbread cookies because shortbread is my favorite, and legit, they tasted like they were from
Oh,
hell.
nice.
They
We
were
made
horrible.
pretzels last weekend. They actually came out great. I was very excited.
The amount of cake mixes that came in my last grocery order from my wife was terrifying.
Oh my God. We've been, speaking of like supporting local places, there's a bakery near us, and like we've been doing just because cakes. We're just like, we want a cake, do whatever you want as far
Does
as
it say
decorations.
just because?
Well, like we did like a Disney World theme one weekend, and we called and we're like, we're doing that. Like just put whatever you want on the cake. So like they did one, and like we've done a couple others. Like I've eaten so much cake on this goddamn thing. Like it's a disaster. All right, let's bang through the rest of these quickly. What are you looking
Got a
forward
cake
to?
to eat.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to right now? A new season of The Last Drive-In starts next Friday, and I can't wait.
Definitely, The Last Drive-In is kind of a beacon for me right now.
Yeah,
Killing
that's what
Eve because I love Villanelle. If you're not watching Killing Eve, you should definitely check it out.
Nice.
Yeah, that's been on my list. We have not.
Oh, I think
Not
I
yet.
would really like it. It's really, really good.
We should mention too
That's one of my lists too.
that we have a Last Drive-In channel in Slack, and there's always a big group of people watching together when those air. So
Nice. One more from Jody, and then we got one more after that. When's the last time you've actually worn pants? It's a grocery store only thing for me.
I still kind of wear
Oh.
pants during the day sometimes. If I'm trying to feel, I don't know, productive, I'm gonna put pants on today.
Yeah,
I would
I've
100.
literally worn the same type of bike shorts for like going on 4 weeks, and I'm probably just gonna wear them to work from now on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've been wearing like my like gardening shorts for the past like month.
Yeah.
Unless
Oh,
I
yeah.
go to the grocery store, and even sometimes then, if it's a little warmer out, like I'll just wear them because who cares?
You guys can have my khaki cargo shorts when I die.
When we pry them from your cold dead body.
Exactly.
Cold dead hands.
All right, last but not least, this one somewhat directed at CC. This is at Book of Faces. If Joe's whole life is a waste of beer, what is the rest of the BGH's crew whole life a waste of? I think John would obviously be V
Casey's
next.
is a waste of boners.
Yeah. Gentleman bonus. I'll be honest,
Sean's is a
Casey.
waste
Now
of
I feel a
money.
lot better about mine.
Eric's is a waste of. Oh man, I was going so good.
I'm like,
It's got to be gluten-free beer.
Yeah.
Free beer, right?
I mean, John's would be V next, right? Like that's.
honestly, waiting for what you're about to say, I don't think I've ever been more terrified in my life.
I don't know. I don't think there's anything worse than a waste of boners. So.
I only said that because we're currently talking about boners in the Slack channel.
Wait, are we? I gotta get it on that.
Well,
That's it. Eric.
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right.
Wait.
F and A. 5K coming up. Don't forget patreon.com/bloodygoodhorror. You got the book club, you got Something Red, you got the Joe Show, literally everything you could ever need here at Bloody Good Horror. Thanks for hanging out, helping us get through this together. We're not sure what we're doing next week. Keep an eye on the socials, and we'll let you know as soon as we pick a movie, and we'll talk to you then.
See you.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.